Kurt, for this week of PBT Extra, we're in the thick of playoffs. Let's start with a very boring game. Miami Heat, Philadelphia 76ers. It wasn't even close. What were your takeaways from that game?
That was the best Miami defensive performance of the series, right? Like, they really did a good job. They fronted Embiid, which they've kind of done, but they were a little more aggressive. Bam Adebayo had a great game, and they really they couldn't get the passes through to him. They couldn't take advantage of that. James Harden look, he had the great game in Philly, right? And he's had a couple good games there. But David Thorpe, who is written for ESPN, a famous kind of well-known player development guy, has a saying that when you get older, it's not that being old doesn't make you spectacular. It just makes you spectacular less often. And I feel like we're kind of there with Harden. Like, he's capable of having that 31-point breakout game and he's screaming, running down the court. And then the next game, he can't replicate that like he did 5-7 years ago when he was one of the top players in the league. They need that guy, unfortunately. They couldn't get the ball inside to Embiid. And Miami pretty much just did everything right. And what's more, I think Miami can replicate that. Maybe in Philadelphia in Game 6, but they got 2 shots at it now, Corey. I mean, can you see Philly coming back?
Well, no. No, I don't think they're. This is back to our earlier conversation. Remember when we asked this question of, does Philadelphia get any better with James Harden? Right, and that was a real question. I was unsure. I thought it was a wash. And then now I look at this, it's fascinating, the pre and post trade Harden, like, because in Brooklyn, James Harden was still balling. That was like 2 months ago. Like, it wasn't that long ago that he was putting up like 20 and 20, like some crazy performances. And all of us were saying, wow, this Nets team is going to go all the way. And then now he's too old, right? So I think in that sense, I disagree with you there. Yes, he had 14 points in this game. He's a former MVP. Like, we expect more from James Harden, generally speaking. But I think that the team itself just isn't as good of a team as Miami. And I think everything that Miami has going for them basically comes down to this idea of, we know who we are identity-wise, we have time, and we have alignment, and we have strong leadership. And in today's NBA, you can name like a handful of teams that have those things, and they're like the Suns, the Heat, the Spurs. It's like a very few, the Bucks. It's a short list.
Yeah. They also have depth, which allows them to do, look, Kyle Lowry hasn't been right because of the hamstring. He hasn't been able to do Kyle Lowry things out there. And I thought at first just having his presence out there would help, but really, I think we saw it in the last game. If he's not 100%, if he's not Kyle Lowry, they're better off with Gabe Vincent, right? Like, they're better off with 100% of Gabe Vincent, who plays well. And by the way, since my daughter is now going to be attending UC Santa Barbara, we say nothing bad about Gabe Vincent on this podcast, right? He is the lone UCSB player in the league, so he gets nothing but love from us. But that said, I think they're better off with him. With Duncan Robinson got some minutes. You're again finally kind of back in the mix in the series. They have the depth to kind of match up and do things, and Philly wasn't able to take advantage of it. I think you're better off they just have so much depth that they can, like, hey, we can plug this guy in, and everybody buys into, like you said, buys into the culture, believes, plays their role, and it's great.
Yeah, culture is an amorphous word, right? But I think we can see it easily translate in this Game 5 scoreline, 120-85. You could turn the game off at halftime, essentially. And the reason it's confounding to so many people is you think, okay, well, you have talent, but why doesn't it translate to success consistently? And I think one of the issues is, well, it's just like a lot of energy, but going where? Like, you have to focus it. And that's where, like, culture comes into play, that word. It's like the Heat way, the Heat culture, it's focused all that talent. And in that case, since it's focused, you don't necessarily need an MVP candidate on the roster because you're getting the most out of everyone. Duncan Robinson, who is amazing at what he does, is comfortable getting less minutes or coming off the bench, whatever it might be, whatever helps the team win. Tyler Hero is comfortable accepting that 6th Man of the Year award, and he accepts it with gusto. Jimmy Butler's comfortable, PJ Tucker's comfortable. Like, everyone does what they do. And when everyone does what they do, it's just like a very focused, it's like a very fine edge. And that is better than a blunt, the blunt edge of a very talented team. And in Game 6, do you think there's any way that Philadelphia comes and wins 2 back like they did at the beginning of the series?
First off, I think what you talked about, you're a football guy. It's Belichickian, right? kind of the culture where everybody knows their role, everybody kind of accepts the role. It's always kind of struck me that way with Miami. I don't know if that comparison works because you're I will trust you on football more than myself. But
you got to get the most out of your guys. But also, Belichick had the greatest football player of all time.
Yeah, that does help. I don't think they can win 2 in a row. I don't think that they can be consistent enough. I think we saw all the adjustments Miami needs to make, but also that they can execute them at this high level. And I don't know that they can put 2 in a row together like they did. I think they can win game 6. They're going to be that's a tough out, right? Going into Philadelphia, Embiid's going to be fired up. He's not going to want to, certainly not going to lose. He doesn't want to lose, but doesn't want to lose on his home court. And I think that I'm not sure that this doesn't go 7, but it's really hard for me to see Philadelphia winning 2 left. I just think Miami's kind of figured out the code now.
Another series in the Eastern Conference that we have our eyes on, obviously, Celtics, Bucks. This one, I mean, talk about a heavyweight fight. This is like one of my favorite series of the entire NBA playoffs so far. The Celtics won 116, 108 in game 4. Now the series is tied. Al Horford had 30 points, double digits in the fourth quarter, going back-to-back against Giannis. And that one dunk, by the way, let's just focus. Yeah. He dunked. He took Giannis from the 3-point line to the rim, and this is like a defensive player. This is Giannis, and to do that on a back-to-back MVP, who's an MVP finalist again this year. I mean, that was just an iconic play.
It was amazing how look. Horford's been very good this whole series, but whether he got, he said after the game he got fired up when Giannis dunked over him and kind of stared him down. He's like, "All right, you want to do that?" It's funny. Even Horford's sister tweeted out during the game, like, "I've seen that face. You just made him mad." And he played so well the rest of the way, fired up. And it was like 2007 NCAA finals Horford, right? Like just taking it to Ohio State. That was a fantastic throwback game from him. And it does put Boston kind of in the driver's seat, doesn't it? Don't you feel like now, like, I don't know. It's going to be a really tight series. I still think this is a 7-game series, but you see games from like that from Boston, and that's when I think, man, I don't know how you get past them, but I don't know about you. Like I keep watching Boston in those moments and thinking that they're the team to beat, and I'll turn around next game and watch them get beat.
Yeah, this Boston team's like right on the edge, and they're one of those teams where I understand first round against the Nets, they just plowed through. I get that, but you actually watch the games, you look at the score lines, and you're like, some of those games went down. Yeah. And then the same thing here. You look at these score lines, it's like there's not a lot of margin for error here. And I think that I can see that 2 different ways. One, clearly the Celtics aren't the most dominant team in the NBA or even in the Eastern Conference. But the one thing that they have going for them is that they find a way to win. And I find that to be the biggest boon for them. It's like somehow, some way, Jason Tatum, you're going to have to like drag him off on a shield. Like he's just not going to give up, right? And I think that is that quality in the playoffs with the match intensity. We're seeing like the, tempers flare. We're seeing, a very intense, especially in this series, a very intense playoff series. That quality is fantastic. But I never count out the Bucks, especially, and understand this is without Middleton as well, right? Without Chris Middleton. But anytime Giannis is on the floor, I don't know. I tend to shade towards Giannis.
What's been fun about this series is how intense, how physical, and it hasn't crossed over like some of the other series. It hasn't gotten chippy. I don't want to say guys aren't complaining to the refs, but it hasn't reached the level of kind of I don't want to say dirty plays, but cheaper plays. This has been 2 very good, very professional teams going hard at each other with a certain amount of respect for it. It's been so much fun to watch. It's why, frankly, I'm rooting for 7 games, Corey. I need a game 7 in the series.
I know.
I love, by the way, you mentioned Tatum. He had the bad game. He had the 10-point off game. He bounced back. He had 32. I mean, we were all focused on Horford because we're like, he's dunking on Giannis, and we haven't seen this out of Al. Hey, Tatum got to spots, had 30 points himself, was hitting his threes. That's what he bounced back, which is, again, that's what all NBA type players have to do.
Yeah, his growth year to year is it's amazing. It's astounding to me. The leaps and bounds every single time. I'm just like, man, this guy is becoming a like legit franchise player. Like we already knew he was that kind of talent, but everything you're talking about to bounce back against the defending champions in this, in the Eastern Conference semifinals, with season on the line, and come back and respond with 32 points, like that kind of level, that's rare. That's rare. So Memphis and Golden State. It's interesting. This Memphis team is without Ja Morant. He has the bone bruise in his knee. It looks like he won't come back for the rest of the series, Kurt. And this game actually came down to the wire. In the fourth quarter, the Golden State Warriors got their first lead with minutes left in the game. Minutes left in the game. It ended up being 101-98. Now Golden State's up 3-1. What do you foresee the rest of this series?
This was a vintage Warriors game in the sense that when and frankly, there's some smart gamblers out there who know patterns who just made a bunch of money off this, because the Warriors do this. If they think of themselves as the better team, I mean, they think they're going to win every game, right? But if they go in and like, oh, we got this, they're without Morant and we're the better team anyway, they play with their food. They don't take the game seriously enough. I mean, how sloppy were they with turnovers and everything? And then they're like, oh, we got to get serious and win this game. And they pull it together enough to win. I don't think that's going to happen twice in a row. They might lose game 5 in Memphis. Like Memphis may be able to extend this to 6, but if it gets to 6, the Warriors will be like, all right, we're done playing around, and they'll get serious. Without Morant's ability to create in the half court, they were great this season. Tyus Jones had great games. They were 20-5 without him. But in the playoffs, they're actually like minus 15.2 or something. Like their net rating when Morant's been off the floor, they've really struggled in the half court. They need his creation, and without it, I can't see. Maybe they can win one at home, but I can't. Maybe they finally get a good Desmond Bane game in this series, but I can't see them winning a couple. I mean, do you see it differently?
No, yeah, I'm right there with you. I think the Warriors are going to go ahead and finish this up. What's interesting though is when I watched the end of that game. This is the thing. I remember telling this to my dad. I was watching the Warriors back home in San Antonio. I was watching the Grizzlies back home in San Antonio, and I remember watching the game and thinking they look really good, but then there was a fourth quarter collapse every single time. Like there's just they show like these kind of this chink in the armor every single time in the fourth quarter, and that's when Ja Morant comes in and scores 16 points, right? That's why the league in clutch points, because Ja finishes games for them. But without Ja, the fourth quarter they're flailing, and at the end of that game, I'm looking at Dylan Brooks taking contested shots 2-3 steps above outside of the 3-point line. Jaren Jackson trying to be a shot creator down the stretch in clutch situations. And it's one of those things where, look, everyone has a role, right? And on teams, you need to have a closer. And for the Memphis Grizzlies, they're lucky in the fact that their best player is their closer, and also he can do everything, right? Like he's one of the best rebounders on the team, he's one of the best scorers on the team, and he's a closer. Sometimes you have scorers, and then you have closers. There are different roles, but Ja is a lot of roles for this Grizzlies team. And the fact of the matter is, without him, they're flailing, they're vulnerable in the fourth quarter. And when across the way you have Steph Curry, I mean, come on. It's just.
The Warriors have learned how to close games, right? Like over this whole era, they are a team that knows how to close things out. The Grizzlies are going to get there, like in a few years. This team, but these are the lessons along the way.
Yes, I completely agree with you. And then an interesting series that kind of surprised me. We're talking about Dallas Phoenix, because Phoenix is by far the best team in the NBA. And yet, Dallas somehow won 2 games. And we get into game 5, and this is exactly what I expected to see. The scoreline 110-80 in Phoenix's favor. So a complete blowout. What do you think about this series? Why does Dallas even have a chance here going forward?
They've got a chance because they've got Luka. I'm not going to completely count them out. But I thought that last game was defensively what you really want out of Phoenix. Like they didn't. I mean, they switched a little, but they switched less. They played Biyombo more as a backup to Ayton. But what they really did was say, we're going to switch and then try to maybe scram behind and get Bridges back on Luka. we're going to make Luka put up a lot of points. We're going to help, we actually helped like one passer away, which is usually a sin, but it wasn't the dangerous shooters. And we're going to make him work for his points and not let, look, Brunson got 21, but nobody else got rolling. And I think that that's the plan now. Like, we're going to make Luka beat us. Luka is going to have to put up 50, he's going to have to put up some ridiculous number to keep his team in the game. And he's capable of that. But you've seen it over the years, and you especially being around the Spurs, hey, the day that Tony Parker or Duncan or whoever goes off for 50, that's not the games they win, right? Like, that's the games where somebody kind of or they eke it out. The games they win handily are the ones where the ball's flying around and everybody's got 15 to 20. And that's what Dallas needs more. They have to get those secondary scores going. And I think Phoenix did a really good job of cutting those off. Plus, like, Devin Booker was getting to his spots. They were hitting the mid-range shots. They just looked more comfortable at home.
Yeah, when I looked at Game 4, I thought that was a pretty good microcosm of the whole series, right? Chris Paul just was almost not even existent in that game. I mean, and this is a guy who was on the 75th anniversary team, right? And he had 5 points.
Yeah.
And Chris Paul is the best player on this team, right? And yet, so Chris Paul had 5 points in Game 4. The Mavs hit 23 pointers. They hit 23s, and they won by 10.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I was like, when I saw that game, I thought everything's going in Dallas's favor, and they're barely eking it out, to steal your language. So it's just like, when Phoenix actually plays the way that they can play, it's not even a contest, as we saw in Game 5. So from my perspective, yeah, the Suns kind of proved that, and they're going to go ahead and finish this out. I am curious, though. One of the conversations that arose is actually, I would love to hear. Actually, that. One thing I would love to hear from you, Kurt, is who do you think is the best player on the Suns team? Do you think it is Booker? Do you think it is Chris Paul?
I think Booker is the best player. I think, if you're going to say, yeah, I would go with Booker as the best player on this team, but they're not there without Chris Paul. And I think you saw that in Game 5. I think he still only had 7 points, right? Like, he didn't really run away with this. He had, I'm going to forget now, 13 assists or whatever the number was, but he was way more involved, right? He was active. He was setting other guys up, and his presence, as what he brings is, if he's not the best floor general ever in the league, he's in the top 3 or 4. Like, his ability to organize an offense and his high IQ play is just on another level from everybody else. And when he gets the ball moving around and the ball is flying around for them, they're just so tough to stop because they've got shooters everywhere. And Booker, like I said, it opened up. They struggled from the mid-range the 2 games in Dallas. They were knocking those shots down. They were getting them and knocking them down. They had 20 more points in the paint. They were getting inside in Game 5. They were just getting the shots they wanted against Dallas. And I think what you and I both see is that Phoenix can replicate that more easily than I think Dallas can replicate their wins.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think of one of the enduring images is DeAndre Ayton with his sweatband just dunking. It's just like, man, 20 extra more points in the paint. I was just like, man, dunk. It was it was just completely one-sided. And I think it's clear in my estimation that the Suns and the Heat are probably, in my mind, the 2 best teams currently playing right now. But like we said,
you know what? I got a feeling whoever survives, it's almost the right phrase, that Celtics series, that is a battle-tested team coming up. Maybe they're a little too battle-tested. I think we'll find out. I got a feeling it's that team. And probably the Suns. Do you have the Suns over the Warriors?
Exactly. At this point, we're kind of looking ahead, which is at this point, it's Suns versus Warriors. And I think that's completely fair at the current moment. And I would say yes, which is it's hard for me to say that because we've seen a resurgence of that, of the big 3 that they have there. But still, for me, the Suns are just too good. It's just when you think about it like a chess match, you think about like anything, how do you attack the Suns team? It's just, they're just tactically sound, they're deep. It's just hard. It's hard to beat them. It's very hard.
I think I'm with you. I think the Suns win that series, but I'm looking forward to that one. Like 7 games again. Give me all of it. What Monty Williams has is a larger quiver of arrows. Like I think he's got more weapons and options and choices and ways. The Warriors are deep, but they're going to play their 3 guards a lot, right? There's certain things that they kind of need to do to win. I think you get a more versatile Suns team that can attack them different ways and eventually figure out what works.